She still signs her letters Duchess of York, not by entitlement, but by memory. Sarah Ferguson has always lived in that strange half-light between belonging and exile, royal in name, ordinary in reality, forever balancing charm against consequence. Long after the crown withdrew its checkbook, she continued to live as though it hadn't. Holidays with benefactors, designer handbags beside unpaid invoices, champagne toasts for charities while accountants whispered in corridors. To the public, she remained delightfully unbreakable, the woman who laughed louder than her losses. But behind the soft laughter lies a sharper equation. What sustains a duchess when the palace no longer pays? Her story is not one of rebellion, but of reinvention. A life built from invitations and IOUs. She became an author, a goodwill ambassador, a familiar face on daytime sofas. Always visible, never quite solvent. Observers called it resilience. Critics called it denial. Perhaps it was both, a survival instinct refined in royal exile. Because in Britain, image often outlives means, and grace can be performed long after the grace period ends. The contradiction is almost Shakespearean. A duchess without a duchy, a royal without a realm, and yet, somehow, still centre stage. Tonight, her silhouette stands as a question in itself. When privilege fades, can charm pay the rent? As the shot closes, the pearls glint faintly under lamplight. Beside them, a single unopened envelope marked "Final Notice." After the separation, most expected Sarah Ferguson to disappear, another fallen figure absorbed by royal silence. But instead, she did the opposite. She turned exile into enterprise. While others within the palace retreated behind velvet curtains, she walked straight into studio lights. Daytime sofas, talk show confessionals, brand partnerships. She became Britain's most industrious exile. A duchess without a budget, but with an unmistakable instinct for survival. From Budgie the Little Helicopter to children's books and charity galas, every project was a thread in her self-made tapestry. She rebuilt her life not through titles, but through effort, speaking openly about debt, parenting, and forgiveness. Where the monarchy demanded mystique, she offered relatability. In America, that candor made her a curiosity, then a celebrity. Interviews with Oprah, appearances on morning television, even wellness ventures that blurred the line between self-help and self-preservation. To the British press, she was the duchess who refused to fade. To her daughters, she was simply mum, holding the family together with optimism that bordered on defiance. But reinvention, like royalty, has a cost. Every new endorsement invited new scrutiny. Each photo shoot brought whispers from courtiers about propriety. To survive outside the institution, she had to perform. And to perform, she had to keep smiling. Observers noted that her laughter grew louder when finances grew thinner. It became her trademark, not the polished poise of palace life, but a very human tremor wrapped in cheer. Her laughter filled the space where approval once lived. In that resilience lay a quiet rebellion. While the monarchy measured worth in restraint, Sarah Ferguson measured hers in motion. She made work her sanctuary, proof that redemption, however commercial, was still a form of grace. Yet beneath the applause and endorsements lingered an unspoken truth. Even freedom carries invoices. The palace may have looked away, but the world kept watching. Curious, admiring, uneasy. As the camera lingers, studio lights fade into the warm glow of Royal Lodge. The applause dissolves into candlelight. And for a moment, the line between performance and privacy blurs. The Duchess smiling into the quiet, as if reminding herself that survival too is a full-time role. In 2010, a grainy recording changed everything. Hidden cameras, a London hotel suite, the Duchess of York smiling wearily across a low table, unaware that every word was being filmed. She spoke of introductions, of access, of influence. The figure named was £500,000, a sum that sounded less like ambition and more like rescue. "I need to pay debts," she murmured, almost to herself. The tabloids would soon turn it into a headline. Duchess for sale. The footage, broadcast worldwide, was devastating. Not theatrical, not cold. Just tired. A woman visibly fraying under the arithmetic of her own life. What the world saw was not corruption, but collapse. Within hours, the palace issued distance. Statements were measured, tones restrained, but the message unmistakable. This was not a royal matter. Prince Andrew, though steadfast in private, remained silent in public. The same silence that once shielded her now became the space in which her humiliation echoed. For Sarah Ferguson, it was not merely a scandal, it was exposure. The polite fiction of stability had shattered. a duchess stripped not of title, but of illusion. She had been caught not selling influence, but confessing need, a truth the monarchy rarely allows to surface. Public opinion divided sharply. Some saw greed, others saw a woman cornered, an exile negotiating survival with the only currency left to her: access. The image was uncomfortable precisely because it felt human. She was the embodiment of the royal contradiction: privilege without power, fame without fortune, loyalty without return. Reporters called it disgrace. But to many viewers, it looked more like exhaustion, the moment dignity bends under debt. Britain, for all its appetite for royal spectacle, seemed unsure whether to scorn or pity her. And in that hesitation lay the quiet tragedy of Sarah Ferguson. That her most damning moment was also her most honest. The monarchy trades in composure, she traded in confession. As the headlines swelled, the camera's closing shot lingered. A corridor at dusk, footsteps fading, a single door clicking shut. Outside, flashbulbs burst against a black car window as she looked down, neither defiant nor defeated, just still. That day, the Duchess paid a price larger than money. It was the cost of being human in a system that only forgives perfection. Time did not erase Sarah Ferguson, it simply altered her outline. The laughter remained, but the tempo changed. The woman once known for her exuberance began to move through the world with quieter purpose, less spectacle, more substance. After the sting and the storm, she retreated into work that no longer needed headlines. Children's books, small foundations, hospital visits, gestures of grace stitched into ordinary days. She poured her remaining privilege into helping others, as if redemption could be rebuilt through kindness alone. Her charity, Sarah's Trust, became the next chapter, a quieter platform where her name could serve, not sell. In interviews, she spoke less about image, more about gratitude. The words thank you began to appear more often than sorry. And through it all, one bond remained unchanged: Prince Andrew. Even as his own reputation later fractured under far heavier scrutiny, she never withdrew her loyalty. She stood beside him at family events, defended his character on record, and described their relationship as unbreakable. It was a word that divided the public: devotion to some, denial to others. Yet to her, perhaps, it was neither. It was simply habit, the kind of love that endures not because it should, but because it always has. Observers noted that she seemed freer in limitation than she ever was in luxury. The royal invitations grew fewer, but the sense of peace seemed more genuine. She had stopped trying to earn forgiveness and started living as though she already had it. Her daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, became her quiet redemption. Their weddings, their kindness, their dignity in a world she once unsettled. Each became proof that her legacy was not scandal, but survival. There is an unspoken beauty in endurance. The Duchess of York learned to live with less applause, fewer cameras, and a slower kind of acceptance. The monarchy may have moved on, but she remained. Loyal, imperfect, still standing. As the shot softens, we find her in a school library, reading aloud from a children's book, laughter rising softly between pages. On the desk beside her rests a framed photograph of her daughters, smiling, content, home. She may never have regained the world's approval, but she no longer needs its permission. History will not remember Sarah Ferguson for grandeur, but for endurance wrapped in grace. She lived as though the gates of Windsor were still open, even when they quietly closed behind her. In a family that prizes silence, she chose visibility, a dangerous kind of honesty in a world built on discretion. While others perfected the art of distance, she stumbled openly, laughed too loudly, confessed too soon. And in doing so, she revealed something the monarchy rarely admits: its discomfort with imperfection. Her story is not that of a rebel, nor a victim, but a survivor, a woman who turned exile into expression. The same warmth that once embarrassed the palace became, in time, her signature strength. Every scandal softened, every apology aged into something more human than history usually allows. She never stopped moving, never stopped smiling, not as denial, but as declaration. A quiet insistence that redemption is not a royal privilege, but a personal right. Observers still debate her legacy. Was she foolishly loyal or courageously kind? Too public or simply too human? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere between. In the quiet arithmetic of royal life, Sarah Ferguson remains the unbalanced column. Judged, forgiven, and yet somehow never fully reconciled. A duchess who refused to vanish from the ledger, even when her page should have been turned. As candlelight fades in the window of Royal Lodge, dawn breaks across Windsor's misted lawns. The air holds that fragile stillness before a new day, neither triumph nor tragedy, just endurance. She stands, as she always has, between scandal and grace, proof that survival too can be a form of nobility. For all her ventures, the numbers never quite aligned. The Duchess worked tirelessly, wrote books, filmed documentaries, fronted causes, yet her accounts remained an unsolved mystery. By the late 2000s, reports began to surface. Unpaid debts, lawsuits, loans that blurred into lifelines. She was said to owe hundreds of thousands, not through malice, but through mismanagement. A life lived faster than its income could follow. It was never greed. It was generosity without arithmetic. Her loyalty to Prince Andrew remained her constant, the one investment she never withdrew. Though divorced, they continued to share Royal Lodge, holidays abroad, even family photographs that looked curiously intact. To outsiders, it was a symbol of forgiveness. To insiders, a question mark. How could a duchess, officially without royal funding, maintain a life framed by chandeliers and chauffeurs? The palace said little, the public said plenty. And in the silence between them, whispers of benefactors began to circulate. Private businessmen, discreet friends, quiet gestures dressed as gifts. Yet Sarah Ferguson never played the victim. She spoke with disarming honesty about her mistakes, the naivety of trust, the pressure to keep up appearances, the guilt of wanting her daughters to live without the shadow of her downfall. "I overspent on love," she once hinted, half apology, half confession. Her story in those years was not one of deceit, but dependence. A woman who had learned to survive on goodwill, royal, social, financial, because her own name no longer held value in the ledger of wealth. Observers saw tragedy where she saw tenacity. They called her indulgent, she called herself human. Even as creditors circled, her optimism never dimmed. It was as if belief alone could balance the books. In Britain's quiet economy of class and grace, she became a moral equation, affection over arithmetic. Each act of help came with its own interest rate, not in money, but in judgment. Through it all, her light never quite went out, flickering perhaps, but never gone. And maybe that, in itself, was the cost of survival, to shine brightly enough for the world to watch, but never long enough for it to see the cracks. As rain streaks down the window of a parked Rolls-Royce outside Royal Lodge, a single lamp burns in the study. Somewhere inside, the Duchess writes another letter, equal parts apology and promise, still believing that one day the sums of grace and goodwill might finally add up.